Imagine for a second trying to build a life, a home, in one of the most hostile environments you can think of. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. This is the incredible story of the Mennonites, who between 1930 and 1960 walked into the Mexican desert and against all odds made it bloom.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How in the world do you make a desert bloom? It sounds kind of impossible, but that's the challenge we're digging into. How did a small, really determined group of people turn a barren wasteland into a thriving oasis? So let's get into it. Okay, so first we have to understand just how massive this challenge was. This wasn't just about building a new town. No, this was a day-in, day-out battle for sheer survival in a place that was completely unforgiving. And when I say unforgiving, I really mean it. The land they settled on was seen by pretty much everyone as totally useless, completely infertile. It was the kind of place nobody else wanted, which honestly makes what they accomplished even more amazing. So let's set the clock. We're starting in the 1930s. Now, these first years were defined by just immense hardship, but they also marked the very beginning of a transformation that would change not only the landscape, but their community forever. So how'd they do it? What was the secret? Well, it wasn't some kind of magic. Their success was built on a really simple but incredibly powerful blueprint. Unshakable faith, a relentless work ethic, and a totally unbreakable sense of community. And what's so fascinating is just how practical their recipe for survival was. First, they built windmills to get water, a huge undertaking. Then, they taught themselves how to drill deep, deep wells to tap into groundwater. But the most crucial ingredient, the one that held it all together, was their unity. None of this was possible alone. Their real strength was in sticking together. And the results of all that hard work? Well, they were incredible. They basically conquered the desert. Pretty soon they were growing corn, wheat, and alfalfa on that soil everyone said was barren. They set up their own workshops for wagon wheels and furniture, becoming totally self-sufficient. And there's this great detail from the source material. It says the bread the women baked smelled of home. It just paints such a powerful picture. You know, that self-sufficiency wasn't just about food and tools. It was the foundation for their real goal, which was to preserve their unique way of life. And that led them to build a society that was intentionally separate, truly a world unto themselves. Just look at the rhythm of their lives here. It was so specific, so intentional. Every single day started with prayer and was filled with hard work. But notice the evenings, they were for silence. And Sundays weren't marked by the sound of machines, but by the sound of the community singing together. Every little bit of this was a deliberate choice to reinforce their values. This really highlights the hard line they drew in the sand. You had two worlds. Inside their colony, it was their German language, their own schools, and their faith was the law. Outside was the modern world, which they saw as a source of outside influence and worldly temptation that they needed to guard against. So the key point here is that this isolation was no accident. It was a very deliberate choice. They saw this separation as their greatest strength. It was like a protective shield to guard their values against what they viewed as the decay of the modern world. And this strategy totally shaped how they were seen by others. Their Mexican neighbors had this deep respect for them. They're described in our source with this quote as hardworking, honest, peace-loving, and withdrawn. I mean, people would come from all over just to buy their tools or have machinery repaired in their quiet, efficient workshops. But, you know, no shield is perfect. And as the decades rolled by, a new, much more subtle challenge began to creep in. It was like a quiet whisper of the future, and it started to test the world they had so carefully built. So on the face of it, everything looked great. It was orderly, it was stable, it was successful. But just beneath that calm surface, something was starting to shift. The world outside their colony was changing fast. Cities were growing, new roads were being built, and modern ideas were traveling right along with them. And right here, the tension turns inward. The younger generation, the ones who were born in this self-made oasis, they started to look beyond the fences. They quietly wondered about the world they could hear on radios, or the kind of freedom a car might offer. These weren't just objects, they represented the possibility of a different future than the one that was laid out for them. And all of this leaves us with this powerful, universal question that really gets to the heart of their story, and maybe even our own. What's stronger in the end? The powerful pull of tradition, or the unstoppable force of change? That was the question this community suddenly had to start grappling with, right there in the heart of the desert they had made bloom.